Hey guys, in this video, we're going to be talking all about premature ejaculation and some things you can do naturally to remedy it. Alright, so first and foremost, let's clear up some of this terminology and talk about what it actually means to be diagnosed with premature ejaculation. You might be surprised about what qualifies as premature ejaculation or not. So at least according to my research in various medical journals, and you'd probably find the same if you hopped online and dove into some of the research, that premature ejaculation refers to ejaculating within the first 60 seconds of penetration or even prior to penetration. So before you jump the gun, just know that to be clinically diagnosed, at least with premature ejaculation, we're talking about ejaculating less than 60 seconds, under 60 seconds, so very rapidly. And from this point, there is some scientific or biological explanation, as well as a couple of simple herbs and things to consider that could largely help. So one of the first things I just wanted to share with you is this study on the roles of the central nervous system in ejaculation. So according to this, ejaculation is a process involving both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. So I break this terminology down a lot in these videos. Sympathetic generally refers to more of the excitatory processes in the body. It's basically what's triggered under stress. So under stress, anxiety, if you're exercising even to a certain degree, your sympathetic nervous system tends to turn on. Whereas the parasympathetic nervous system is generally the relaxed portion of your nervous system and the part of the nervous system that you'd want to be activated the majority of the time, at least 80% of the time. And in fact, sex overall as an act is largely parasympathetic. You need to be relaxed and rested in order to maintain an erection, to get an erection, to experience pleasure, to basically enjoy all aspects of sex, physically, chemically, and even mentally and emotionally. You want to be in this relaxed state. However, there's two aspects to ejaculation. There is the emission, and then there is the ejection of the actual semen from the body. And at least according to the study, if we look back at it really quick, what they've determined is that the sympathetic effect is dominant during emission, which squeezes seminal fluid out. And the parasympathetic effect is dominant during the ejection to provide an anti-reflux effect on the ejaculatory duct. So to translate this, what they're getting at is that the sympathetic, the more excited nervous part of the nervous system, is what's responsible for actually ejecting and emitting the seminal fluid. It's responsible for emission, squeezing out the seminal fluid, if you will. Whereas the parasympathetic nervous system is actually largely responsible for actual ejection of the seminal fluid by providing this anti-reflux-like effect. So it sort of also holds back. You'll notice in ejaculation, like most things in the body, there's an in and out. So it's not just all out, there's also an anti-reflux effect happening in the smooth muscle in the penis. And this is largely parasympathetic. So we know that in this way, at least ejaculation is both sympathetic and parasympathetic. But generally speaking, the entire sex act is usually parasympathetic. So this gives us insights as to what might be happening in the nervous system in premature ejaculation, as well as sexual dysfunction altogether. And here is the way that I've come to piece it together. Somebody who generally experiences premature ejaculation, one thing that has been found, there's a bunch of different statistics if you look at this study here, and that one thing that's largely common in a lot of people with premature ejaculation and all sorts of sexual dysfunction is that they undergo lots of stress. They have tons of work stress or social stress or something along those lines. So it's probable that their sympathetic nervous system is highly overactivated. And other stats in these studies show that they don't really have that much sex. They tend to mostly be married. So generally speaking, people that are married and that have the least amount of sex are the ones that experience the highest numbers of premature ejaculation. So now adding my own personal viewpoint on all of this, sort of bridging the psychological and the physiological, the way I see it is this. If we look at these case studies, a large portion of the people that experience premature ejaculation are basically people that are overly stressed and that aren't having much sex. So tying these two things in, here you have somebody whose sympathetic nervous system is already largely overstimulated. And remember, the sympathetic nervous system is what's responsible for the emissions. So if you're in this very sympathetic state, already physiologically because of life stressors, work stressors, and you go to finally have sex, then it's very probable that the emissions of the seminal fluid are likely going to happen a lot sooner because you're already highly sympathetic. But remember, you need to be in a parasympathetic state, not just for proper ejaculation, but for the production of an erection, to have a good, strong libido, to experience more sensual pleasure. All of the good things about sex are very parasympathetic. Even half of the whole ejaculatory process is parasympathetic, relaxed. So to add on top of their physiological stress, their lifestyle stress, you have men who aren't having much sex. And basically, anything for anybody that is scarce, scarcity is going to create value or importance. If you're not having a lot of sex, or you haven't ever had a lot of sex in general, chances are you're going to find it more valuable. You're going to want it. So in this way, you have men who don't really have much sex, it's scarce for them, they want it more, they're going to cling to it more, right? If I tell you this is going to be your only chance all year long to have sex, what's that going to make you do mentally? You're going to all of a sudden get that performance anxiety. You're going to want it more. The scarcity creates value, meaning that the things that you can't have, all of a sudden you have to have. So in the case of premature ejaculation, we know we have a large portion of those men being highly stressed out, they're married and they're not having a lot of sex. So all of a sudden they have to have that sex. Any chance they probably get to have sex, it becomes something that they sort of cling too tightly onto. And anything that you hold on to too tightly, anything that you want too badly, you tend to drive it away. And I see this sort of manifesting in premature ejaculation. So here you have men who don't have a lot of sex, they're already stressed out, they finally get that sex, and what happens? It's over before it even started. It's sort of a manifestation of the things I'm describing here. You have men that want sex so badly, they go to get it and they push it away. And their body literally responds in that way. And again, that's because the overactiveness of the sympathetic nervous system. And remember, desire, wanting something too badly, as I tell my personal clients, is a stress. Desire is a stress. Because by saying, I have to have that thing, I have to have some sex, you're implying you don't have it and you're creating a stress. I want sex, I'm not getting it. That's stress, that's pressure. So that's only further attributing to the overstimulation of the sympathetic nervous system, which in combination with the large amount of work stress, social stress that is seen in people with premature ejaculation, it's no wonder why they experience this. So ultimately, what we're dealing with in premature ejaculation, physiologically speaking, is an overly stimulated sympathetic nervous system. It's largely stress-induced. And as we've seen here, this can be from physiological stressors induced by something like work stress, but I wouldn't be surprised that most men would relate with what I'm saying here. They're not having as much sex as they would like, so when they finally get a chance, they blow it. No pun intended. So I would say that the ultimate remedy for premature ejaculation would be to ultimately reduce total stress and get back to a more parasympathetic and relaxed state, because from that point, sex is generally exciting enough. I don't think any man is going to have an issue activating the sympathetic nervous system during sex. So it's probably going to be more important and therapeutic to activate that parasympathetic nervous system to get in a more relaxed state to induce all the other important factors in sex, producing an erection, maintaining that erection, feeling and sensing pleasure, etc. And then during sex, it's going to be very easy to stimulate that sympathetic nervous system to induce emissions of seminal fluid. So with all this in mind, there are a couple of things that you can do. The first thing is going to be, obviously, take all sorts of proactive steps to reduce your total lifestyle and overall stress, as I mentioned in almost every video. So as always, be sure to reference our other videos on managing stress. Anything that's going to lower cortisol, herbally, supplementally, dietary-wise, and lifestyle-wise will be beneficial. And we have a couple of different great videos here on the channel that can help you achieve that. However, giving you a couple of tips here and now, there are a handful of herbs. There's 3 herbs I have for you that have been clinically studied to help with premature ejaculation, and they're also all premier sexual tonics for the purposes I'm about to mention. So to quickly run through all these, we're going to be looking at Schizandra, ashwagandha, and ginkgo biloba. So looking at these herbs individually, starting off with Schizandra. So in this study has found that the lignans schizandradol A and B isolated from an extract of Schizandra actually enhanced or induced relaxation of the muscle tissue that makes up the penis. So I talk about this herb and this particular effect in the video on erectile dysfunction and Schisondra's effect in treating erectile dysfunction. But how could this help with premature ejaculation? Well, you see, getting back to the major underlying imbalance, the overactivation of the sympathetic nervous system, it seems counterintuitive, but the fact is when you become in this sympathetic state, you actually become really tense, which inhibits the proper functioning of the penis, and that's what induces the emissions. So you'll notice just before ejaculation, during emissions, you actually tense up, you become really tense. So the relaxatory effect of Schisandra is actually what's helpful in preventing premature ejaculation. And since we're on this topic, ultimately, any herb that's going to be helpful for treating erectile dysfunction, or anything that helps with erectile dysfunction as we talk about, is likely going to be beneficial for treating premature ejaculation, because typically 100% of people with premature ejaculation are also experiencing some form of erectile dysfunction. Not everybody with ED is experiencing premature ejaculation, but a large percent of them are. Moving along, we're going to take a look at ginkgo biloba's effect for remedying premature ejaculation. So this is one of the best herbs for erectile dysfunction because it's a great antagonist to nitric oxide and serotonin. So it has an anti-nitric oxide and anti-serotonin effect, which is wonderful because these things are not promoted with health and well-being. They are inflammatory mediators that over the long term would greatly restrict blood flow by tightening the capillaries. So one of the things that has been discovered in a lot of clinical studies is that you can induce sexual dysfunction, so things like erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation, through the use of serotonin reuptake inhibitor drugs. So serotonin is a major antagonist to good and proper sexual function as well as good overall health. And what does this tell us? Well, serotonin generally stimulates the whole excitatory processes in the body and the sympathetic nervous system. So serotonin actually suppresses the metabolism and it's going to activate a more sympathetic state than it would parasympathetic state. It doesn't necessarily relax you, it sedates you in a sense by suppressing energy production. And what we've learned is that ginkgo biloba not only exerts this anti-serotonin effect, but according to study, as seen here, it can induce the relaxation of the corpus cavernosum, which is the muscle tissue that makes up the penis, in a dose-dependent manner. Furthermore, in clinical studies of sexual dysfunction caused by the use of SSRI, serotonin reuptake inhibitor antidepressants, that there was a 76% improvement of men when supplementing with 200 milligrams of ginkgo biloba. They also found that in 1 month it improved all aspects of sexual function, including enhanced desire, excitement, orgasm, and resolution. So ginkgo biloba is one of the premier sex tonics, and it's going to be beneficial not just for erectile dysfunction, but through a couple of major mechanisms can be beneficial for premature ejaculation. Remember, it's an anti-stress tonic. It lowers cortisol up to 20%. It puts you in this more parasympathetic and relaxed state that induces carbon dioxide production, inhibits serotonin and nitric oxide, promoting good and healthy blood flow. All of these things systematically will help with your overall sexual experience, both in maintaining, producing erection, and the regulation of ejaculation. The third and final herb I'd recommend for premature ejaculation would be ashwagandha. Now, ashwagandha has been traditionally used for treating premature ejaculation, and in summary, this has everything to do with its adaptogenic aphrodisiac effects. So most aphrodisiacs in traditional herbal medicine are always adaptogens because of the basic fact. If I were to summarize this whole video into a short sentence, sexual dysfunction is largely induced by stress. So sex is a parasympathetic activity. You need to be relaxed. You can't be stressed out and have good sex. And ashwagandha is one of the best adaptogens on the planet. It lowers cortisol upwards to 26%. It's going to promote testosterone production. It's going to promote the production of carbon dioxide, which will relax the smooth muscle and endothelium in the penis, and in every aspect you could desire is going to promote good and healthy sexual function and would be very beneficial for premature ejaculation. So in conclusion, the thing you're ultimately going to want to do if you're experiencing premature ejaculation is reduce your total stress. If you have work stress, social stress, financial stress, lifestyle stressors, find ways to reduce those. Let go of the things that make you suffer and miserable and just actively decide to do things that are more enjoyable in your life. The other thing that you can do is in regards to sex, if it's something that's scarce for you, you're going to get tense about it. So, you could use things like cognitive therapy to just, be okay with not having as much sex. Find ways to healthfully make sex less desirable. So this is obviously easier said than done, but the ideal mental state you want to be in regards to sex is, I could have it, I could not have it. Then you're more chill and relaxed about it, and you're not tense about it when you finally get to have it, which would activate that sympathetic nervous system, and it could lead to premature ejaculation. So again, easier said than done, but it's at least worth mentioning that the ideal goal where you'd like to be mentally is you could have it or not have it. That'll loosen things up mentally around it and at least not contribute to the stress you might already be experiencing. And lastly, 3 herbs I'd highly recommend looking into using for treating premature ejaculation would be a combination of schizandra, ginkgo biloba, and ashwagandha. That's it for today. If you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for future videos. And of course, if you're interested in supplementing with the herbs I mentioned here today in this video, you can find those on our online tonic herb shop in the description box below.